I'm Nicky DiCarlo. I'm a lead software engineer on the Dealer Tech modernization team. And about 3 weeks ago, Indu asked if I could design a better badge holder for you guys. So to start with, I took measurements of all the key dimensions of the card so that I could use them to build a reference model in CAD to work off of. Next, I'm going to design the shell that's going to hold the card in place. Here, the most important dimensions are the inner clearance, which is going to dictate how tightly the card is retained, and the outer shell thickness, which is going to determine its strength. We want this to be as thin and light as possible so that the badge reader can pick it up, but not so thin that it can't be engraved. I finished the shell by adding a lanyard loop. Here, I copied the existing hole pattern for backwards compatibility, but I trimmed the corners to save weight. Finally, I needed to come up with a design for the back face. Since we're Dealer Tech, I decided to combine the FS Tech light bulb with the Dealer goat, so it would look like the goat is having an idea. Then, by adding material in some places and removing it in others, I'm able to create the illusion of depth. Okay, so that's our initial design complete, but now I only have 2 weeks to build 250 of these, and I still have 3 big problems to solve for it, namely layer adhesion, overhangs, and bed adhesion. I'll start with layer adhesion first. Because our part is going to be made up of many thin lines of plastic melted together, the layers between those lines are going to be the weak point. Anything that tries to pull them apart or push them in shear is going to result in a fracture at the layer lines, which you can see here in this part that I broke during the strength testing I'll show later. To understand the issue with overhangs, let's come back to our model and cut it in half. When we get to the first layer of this overhang wall, there's going to be nothing to support the plastic, so it's just going to fall and our card won't fit. This leaves us a dilemma. We need to pick a surface to print it on, but all 3 surfaces we might choose have a different fatal flaw. So what to do? Well, if I could just rotate the part 45 degrees, then now all the overhangs disappear, and the layer lines are no longer in the same plane as the forces acting on the lanyard loop. But in order to make that work, I need to design a surface that's going to adhere to the bed, but not the part. And that was actually the hardest part of the whole project. The challenge with the breakaway supports are these small fins, each spaced about 5/1000ths of an inch away from the part. The gap is so small that gravity will still bond them to the part, but because they were printed separately, that bond will be quite weak. To solve for bed adhesion, I'm going to give the support an extra wide foot, which is necessary because otherwise when the print head makes contact with the part, it might knock it loose and ruin the whole batch. But once I get everything just right, I'm able to manufacture large batches efficiently, enough to meet our deadline and have a couple left over for the strength testing I mentioned earlier. To illustrate the difference in strength, I built a test rig that would allow me to measure the peak force required to break each part by pulling the lanyard loop. From left to right, you'll see the original batch holder, a vertical sample printed in white, and our final design in blue. I found it interesting that our final design did not actually fail here at the lanyard loop where we would expect, but instead down here where it was being clamped. That tells us that the strength of this loop should be a bit more than measured, but we know for sure that it's at least 4 times stronger than the original, so I'm happy with that. In any case, I hope you guys enjoyed these as much as I enjoyed making them. If you weren't able to get one today, feel free to reach out on Slack or email, and I'm happy to make you another one.